Zara Chen walked through the automatic doors of Lincoln High School, her military-issued boots making soft thuds against the polished linoleum floor. The sound echoed differently here than it did on the metal corridors of the warship Valiant, where she had spent the last 2 years of her life fighting an interstellar war that most people on Earth didn't even know existed. The hallways buzzed with teenage chatter, locker doors slamming, and the general chaos of a Monday morning. Students rushed past her, their biggest worries centered around pop quizzes and weekend parties. None of them noticed the small scars on her hands, or the way her eyes automatically scanned exit points and potential cover positions. At 17, Zara had already commanded a squad of Space Marines in battles across 3 different star systems. She had faced down alien creatures that could tear through steel with their bare claws, negotiated ceasefires with species that communicated through bioluminescent displays, and watched good soldiers die in the cold vacuum of space. Now she was expected to care about algebra homework and cafeteria drama. Principal Morrison had welcomed her back with the standard speech about readjusting to civilian life, completely unaware that Zara had been recruited into humanity's secret interstellar defense force at 15. Her parents thought she had been at a special military academy. Her classmates thought she had transferred schools. The truth was, classified at the highest levels of government. The first period bell rang, and Zara checked her schedule. Advanced physics with Mr. Henderson. At least that might be somewhat challenging, though she doubted they would cover faster-than-light propulsion theory or quantum entanglement communication systems. She found the classroom and took a seat in the back corner, a habit from combat zones where you never sat with your back exposed. The other students filtered in, chatting about their weekends and complaining about the early hour. Zara recognized some faces but felt like she was looking at them through thick glass. These were people from another world, another life. "All right, class," Mr. Henderson announced as he wrote equations on the whiteboard. "Today we're going to discuss Newton's laws of motion. Can anyone tell me what the first law states?" A boy named Derek raised his hand eagerly. "An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion, unless acted upon by an external force." "Very good," the teacher nodded. "Now, this might seem simple, but these laws govern everything from baseballs to rockets." Zara almost laughed. If only they knew about zero-gravity combat, where Newton's laws became matters of life and death. She remembered her first space battle, when Sergeant Torres had grabbed her arm and reminded her that firing a weapon in zero-G would send her flying backward unless she braced properly. That lesson had saved her life more than once. After class, Zara walked to her locker, trying to remember the combination she had used 2 years ago. A group of girls stood nearby discussing someone's Instagram posts with the intensity of military strategists planning an assault. "Did you see what Madison posted?" one of them whispered. "She's totally trying to steal Jake from Emma." "That's so fake," another replied. "She's just jealous because Emma got into the honor society." Zara opened her locker and stared at the small mirror attached to the inside door. The face looking back at her belonged to someone who had seen too much. Her dark hair was shorter now, cut in the practical style required by Space Marines. Her brown eyes held a hardness that hadn't been there when she left. "Zara Chen." She turned to find a tall blonde girl approaching with a bright smile. It took her a moment to recognize Emma Winters, who had been in her sophomore biology class. "Oh my God, you're back!" Emma exclaimed. "Where have you been? Everyone said you transferred to some boarding school." "Something like that," Zara replied carefully, closing her locker. "Special program." "That's so cool. You look so different. More, I don't know, mature. Are you planning to try out for any sports? Tennis tryouts are next week." Zara almost mentioned that she held the base record for combat obstacle courses and could disassemble and reassemble a plasma rifle in under 30 seconds while blindfolded. Instead, She just shrugged. I'm not really into sports anymore. Emma's expression faltered slightly. Oh, well, maybe we could hang out sometime. Catch up. Maybe, Zara said, though she couldn't imagine what they would talk about. How do you explain watching Earth rise over an alien moon while preparing for an assault on an enemy installation? How do you describe the weight of making decisions that could save or doom entire colonies? The morning passed in a blur of classes that felt like elaborate games. English literature discussed symbolism in novels, while Zara thought about the real-world implications of interspecies communication protocols. History class covered World War II battles that seemed almost quaint compared to the three-dimensional warfare she had experienced in asteroid fields and around gas giants. Lunch was the hardest part. The cafeteria was a maze of social hierarchies and unspoken rules that Zara had forgotten how to navigate. She sat alone at a small table, picking at a sandwich that tasted like cardboard compared to the nutrient-rich field rations she had grown accustomed to. Mind if I sit here? Zara looked up to see a boy with messy brown hair and thick glasses. She didn't recognize him, which probably meant he was new or had changed significantly during her absence. It's a free country, she replied, then immediately felt awkward about the phrase. Freedom was more complicated when you had seen entire worlds under alien occupation. I'm Marcus, he said, sitting down with a tray full of what appeared to be the same unappetizing food she was struggling with. Marcus Webb. I transferred here this semester. Zara Chen. Cool name. You seem different from most people here. More, I don't know, serious? That was one way to put it. I've been away for a while. Military school? Marcus asked, and Zara's head snapped up to meet his eyes. There was something knowing in his expression that made her instantly wary. What makes you say that? Marcus gestured subtly toward her posture. The way she sat with her back straight and her hands positioned for quick movement. My dad's career military. You have the look. Zara relaxed slightly. It was an innocent observation, not a security breach. Something like that. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Marcus spoke again. Must be weird coming back to all this. He waved his hand at the cafeteria around them, where the biggest drama seemed to be someone's relationship status. You have no idea, Zara muttered. The afternoon brought chemistry class, where Mrs. Patterson explained basic molecular structures that Zara could have described in her sleep. She had worked with chemical compounds that didn't even exist on Earth's periodic table, substances that could power starships or create atmospheric processors for terraforming operations. During the lab portion, she was paired with a girl named Jessica, who spent most of the time complaining about her nail polish getting ruined by the safety gloves. Zara completed the entire experiment while Jessica took selfies for her social media accounts. You're really good at this, Jessica commented as Zara carefully measured precise amounts of solution. Are you planning to major in chemistry or something? Haven't decided yet, Zara lied. She couldn't exactly explain that she was already qualified to operate advanced xenobiology laboratories and had personally analyzed samples from 3 different alien ecosystems. The final class of the day was physical education, and Zara had been dreading it. Coach Williams led them through what he called intense conditioning exercises that barely qualified as a warm-up by military standards. While her classmates huffed and puffed through jumping jacks and push-ups, Zara moved through the motions with mechanical precision, her mind elsewhere. She thought about Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had saved her life during the siege of Proxima Station by throwing himself in front of alien plasma fire. She thought about the victory celebration afterward, when the entire crew had gathered to honor their fallen comrades. She thought about the moment she realized she was responsible for keeping not just herself alive, but an entire squad of soldiers who trusted her judgment. Chen, Coach Williams called out, you look like you're sleepwalking over there. Give me 20 more push-ups. Zara dropped and executed 20 perfect military-style push-ups without breaking a sweat. The coach raised his eyebrows, clearly surprised by her form and endurance. "Where'd you learn to do push-ups like that?" "Just stayed in shape while I was away," she replied, standing and brushing dust off her hands. After school, Zara walked to her car, a used Honda her parents had bought to welcome her home, and sat in the driver's seat for several minutes before starting the engine. The transition from piloting advanced spacecraft to driving on suburban roads felt surreal. Everything moved so slowly here, so predictably. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother asking about her first day back. Zara stared at the message, trying to figure out how to respond. How do you tell your parents that you spent your day pretending to care about things that seemed meaningless after watching civilizations rise and fall among the stars? She typed back, "Fine. Just adjusting." The drive home took her through neighborhoods where families were having barbecues and kids were playing in yards. Normal life, she reminded herself. This was what she had fought to protect. These people lived their lives in blissful ignorance of the threats that existed beyond their atmosphere, and that was exactly how it should be. But knowing that didn't make the adjustment any easier. Zara parked in her driveway and sat for another moment, gathering the strength to go inside and pretend everything was normal. Tomorrow would bring another day of the same routine, the same meaningless concerns, the same feeling of being completely out of place in the world she had once called home. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, the way Sergeant Torres had taught her before difficult missions. Some battles were fought with weapons and strategy. Others were fought with patience and endurance. This was clearly going to be the latter type. As she walked toward her front door, Zara caught herself automatically scanning the rooftops and shadows, old habits from a life where threats could come from any direction. She forced herself to stop and focus on the present moment. This was her life now, at least until the next time humanity needed her among the stars. The question was whether she could survive long enough to make it that far. The nightmare started on her third week back at Lincoln High. Zara was sitting in calculus class, half listening to Mr. Peterson explain derivatives, when her enhanced hearing picked up a sound that didn't belong. It was subtle, a high-pitched whine that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Her combat instincts kicked in immediately. That frequency was identical to the charging cycle of Vorthon energy weapons, the alien technology that had killed more human soldiers than any other threat in the war. But that was impossible. The Vorthons were contained in their home system, locked behind a quantum barrier that the combined fleets had established after the Battle of Kepler 442. Zara's hand moved instinctively toward her hip, where her sidearm should have been. Instead, she found only the fabric of her jeans. She was in a high school classroom, not a battlefield. There were no Vorthons here. There couldn't be. "Miss Chen," Mr. Peterson's voice cut through her paranoia. "Would you like to solve the next problem?" "Sorry, what?" Zara blinked, focusing on the whiteboard where incomprehensible equations filled the space. "The derivative of fx equals x squared plus 3x minus 7. Zara stared at the problem, her mind still processing the phantom sound. Mathematics seemed absurdly trivial when you'd spent months calculating trajectories for interstellar missiles and plotting jump coordinates through folded space. 2x plus 3, she answered automatically. "Very good. Now can you explain how you arrived at that answer?" Before Zara could respond, the fire alarm began blaring. Students around her groaned and began gathering their things with the casual indifference of teenagers who had experienced countless false alarms. But Zara's blood ran cold. The alarm's pattern was wrong. 3 long blasts, 2 short, 3 long again. That was a military distress signal. SOS in audio form. "Everyone remain calm and proceed to the exits," Mr. Peterson announced. But Zara was already moving. not toward the exits like everyone else, but toward the windows. Her tactical training demanded she assess the situation before blindly following evacuation procedures. What she saw in the parking lot made her stomach drop. 3 sleek black vehicles had surrounded the school, their surfaces reflecting light in a way that suggested advanced stealth technology. They weren't quite invisible, but they bent light around them like heat shimmer on asphalt. More importantly, the figures emerging from those vehicles moved with the precise coordination of military units. But these weren't human soldiers. The beings were tall and angular, their movements too fluid and graceful for human physiology. They wore form-fitting armor that seemed to shift and adapt to their surroundings. And their weapons, dear God. Their weapons were definitely Vorthan plasma rifles. "Everyone needs to move faster," Zara said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to giving orders in crisis situations. Her classmates looked at her in surprise, but something in her tone made them quicken their pace. She grabbed Marcus Webb by the arm as he passed. There was something about him that had bothered her since their first conversation, a knowledge in his eyes that went beyond normal teenage experience. "We need to talk," she whispered urgently. "Now." Marcus nodded grimly. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out. How much did you see?" "Enough. 3 stealth vehicles, Vorthan shock troops, weapons that shouldn't exist on this planet. Who are you, really?" "Intelligence Division, Terran Defense Force. I've been monitoring for exactly this kind of breach." "My cover was to keep an eye on you, actually. Command was worried about psychological readjustment affecting operational security." Zara felt a mix of relief and annoyance. Relief that she wasn't facing this alone, annoyance that she'd been under surveillance. "How did they find me? How did they get through the quantum barrier?" "Unknown on both counts. But right now we have a bigger problem. According to my readings, they're not just here for reconnaissance. Those weapons are charged for a full assault." They had reached the hallway, where students were filing out in orderly lines under the supervision of teachers. None of the adults seemed aware that this wasn't a standard drill. The Vorthans were either jamming electronic surveillance or using some kind of perception filter to avoid detection. "We need to get these people to safety," Zara said, her mind already shifting into combat mode. "The standard evacuation procedures will walk them directly into an ambush." "Agreed. But we're 2 teenagers with no weapons facing an unknown number of alien soldiers with advanced technology. What's your plan?" Zara smiled grimly, feeling more alive than she had since returning to Earth. "Improvise and adapt. First rule of asymmetric warfare." She stepped away from the evacuation line and pulled the fire alarm again, but this time she held it down in a specific pattern. Long, short, long, short, short. The pattern continued for 30 seconds before she released it. "What was that?" Marcus asked. "Military override signal. If any of the faculty are former service members, they'll recognize it as a genuine emergency protocol. It should buy us some chaos and confusion." Sure enough, the orderly evacuation began to break down as several teachers started shouting conflicting instructions. Mr. Henderson, the physics teacher, pushed through the crowd toward them. "Who triggered that override?" he demanded. His entire demeanor changed from mild-mannered educator to something much more dangerous. "I did," Zara replied. "We have hostile extraterrestrial forces surrounding the building. Vorthan shock troops full combat load." Henderson's eyes widened, then narrowed as he processed the information. "How do you know about Vorthan technology?" "Because I spent 2 years fighting them in the Proxima campaign. Sergeant Zara Chen, 3rd Marine Space Division." "Jesus Christ," Henderson muttered. "I'm Captain Henderson, formerly of the 4th Fleet Intelligence. Retired after Kepler 442. He looked at Marcus. "And you?" "Lieutenant Marcus Webb, TDF Intelligence, currently active." Henderson nodded grimly. "Okay, We have 3 military personnel in a school full of civilians facing an unknown alien threat. What are our assets? The chemistry lab has materials we can use for improvised explosives, Marcus suggested, and the machine shop has tools that could be weaponized. Good thinking. But first we need to get the civilians clear without walking them into an ambush. Chen, you said these are Vorthons. What's their standard assault protocol? Zara closed her eyes, accessing memories she'd rather forget. They'll establish a perimeter, then use sonic disruptors to herd targets toward a central collection point. They prefer to take prisoners for interrogation rather than kill outright, at least initially. So the standard evacuation will walk everyone directly into their trap, Henderson concluded. Exactly. We need to create alternative exit routes and draw their attention away from the civilian population. The three of them moved quickly through the school, using Henderson's knowledge of the building and Zara's tactical experience to develop a plan. They would split the school population into smaller groups and evacuate them through multiple exits, while creating diversions to keep the Vorthans focused on perceived threats rather than fleeing civilians. In the chemistry lab, Marcus began combining household chemicals in ways that definitely weren't covered in the standard curriculum. His movements were precise and confident, suggesting extensive training in improvised explosives. "How long have you been watching me?" Zara asked as she helped him measure compounds. 6 months, ever since you were approved for civilian reintegration. Command was concerned about several factors: PTSD, operational security, potential targeting by enemy intelligence. Looks like they were right to be worried about that last one. Henderson returned from his reconnaissance of the building perimeter. I count at least 12 hostiles, possibly more in reserve. They've established checkpoints at all main exits and are beginning to sweep the building methodically. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach this section. Are the students clear? Most of them. I managed to convince the other faculty to use the underground tunnel system that connects to the municipal building next door. Cold War relic that most people forgot about. Zara felt a surge of relief. Whatever happened next, at least the civilian population would be relatively safe. Now they could focus on the more immediate problem of hostile aliens with advanced weaponry. Explosives are ready, Marcus announced, carefully placing several devices in a bag. Basic thermite charges with remote detonators, not exactly military grade, but they'll create plenty of noise and confusion. Perfect. Here's what we're going to do, Zara said, her natural leadership instincts taking over. Henderson, you know this building better than anyone. I need you to guide any remaining civilians to safety and then establish a communication link with local authorities. Don't tell them about aliens, just report armed intruders with advanced weapons. And us? We're going to give these Vorthons exactly what they came for, a fight with human soldiers. Marcus, how are your hand-to-hand combat skills? Adequate for intelligence work. Why? Zara picked up a metal ruler from the teacher's desk and tested its balance. In her hands, even mundane objects became potential weapons. Because we're about to remind these aliens why humans have a reputation for being impossibly stubborn in combat. The sound of plasma rifles charging echoed through the hallways, growing closer. Zara felt the familiar calm settle over her that always came before battle. This wasn't the confused teenager trying to fit back into civilian life. This was Sergeant Chen, veteran of a dozen alien battlefields, protector of human space. The Vorthans had made a critical error in judgment. They had expected to find a psychologically compromised ex-soldier struggling with reintegration. Instead, they had just given her exactly what she needed: a clear mission and a worthy enemy. Time to go to work, she said, and for the first time since returning to Earth, Zara Chen felt truly at home. The first Vorthon soldier rounded the corner just as Zara finished rigging the chemistry lab's gas outlets with Marcus's improvised charges. The alien moved with predatory grace, its elongated limbs carrying advanced plasma weaponry that could punch through starship hull plating. Zara didn't hesitate. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall mount and hurled it with perfect accuracy, striking the Vorthon in what passed for its center mass. The impact staggered the creature long enough for her to close the distance, moving with the fluid efficiency of someone who had spent months learning to fight in zero gravity. The alien's reaction time was impressive. Plasma bolts seared the air where she had been standing a split second earlier. But Zara had fought Vorthons before, and she knew their weakness. They were adapted for long-range combat and relied heavily on their superior technology. In close quarters, human adaptability became a significant advantage. She rolled beneath the alien's follow-up shot and came up inside its guard, driving her knee into what intelligence reports had identified as a major neural cluster. The Vorthon made a sound like breaking glass and stumbled backward, giving her the opening she needed to grab its weapon. The plasma rifle felt alien in her hands, too light, too balanced, shaped for fingers that were longer and more flexible than human anatomy. But she had cross-trained on captured equipment during the war, and muscle memory took over. 2 quick shots dropped the Vorthon permanently. The distinctive whine of plasma discharge echoed through the hallway, and Zara knew their position was now compromised. That was impressively brutal, Marcus observed, emerging from behind an overturned desk where he'd taken cover. Remind me not to get on your bad side. Save the commentary for after we survive this, Zara replied, checking the weapon's power cell. 3/4 charge, maybe 40 shots if she was careful. How many charges did you set? 12. Positioned throughout the building. I can trigger them individually or all at once. What's your preference? Before Zara could answer, the building's public address system crackled to life, but the voice that emerged wasn't human. Attention, human defenders, the translated voice said, each word precisely enunciated in a way that suggested artificial speech synthesis. We have identified Sergeant Zara Chen among the building's occupants. Surrender her immediately, and no harm will come to the remaining humans. Well, that answers how they found you, Marcus muttered. The question is why they want you specifically. Zara's mind raced through possibilities. She had been involved in several classified operations during the war, but nothing that should have made her a specific target, unless... The Kepler incident, she whispered, understanding flooding through her. They know about the Kepler incident. What are you talking about? Classified operation, need-to-know basis. But if they're here for me because of that, we're dealing with something much bigger than a simple raid. The PA system crackled again. You have 5 minutes to comply. After that, we will begin eliminating civilians until Sergeant Chen is produced. They're bluffing, Marcus said immediately. All the civilians are clear. Maybe. But Vorthons don't bluff about operational objectives. If they say they'll start killing people, they mean it. And there might be civilians we missed, janitors, late teachers, students who didn't follow evacuation procedures. Zara moved to the window and carefully peered around the edge. The alien soldiers had repositioned themselves in a tighter perimeter, and she could see additional figures moving in the tree line beyond the parking lot. More reinforcements. We need to change the parameters of this engagement, she decided. Right now, they think they're hunting one traumatized ex-soldier in a building full of helpless civilians. Let's show them what human warfare actually looks like. She triggered her communicator, hoping Captain Henderson was still monitoring their frequency. Henderson, do you copy? Copy, Chen. I've got eyes on additional Vorthon forces moving to surround the building. Count at least 20 hostiles, possibly more. Local authorities are en route, but they're not equipped for this level of threat. Understood. I need you to contact TDF Command immediately. Authorization code Tango 77 Alpha. Tell them we have a Vorthon incursion on Earth soil with specific targeting of classified personnel. Request immediate tactical support. Roger that. What's your plan in the meantime? Zara looked at Marcus, who was monitoring his explosive charges on a jury-rigged detonator. We're going to remind these aliens why humans earned our reputation in the first place. Marcus, can you create a diversion with those charges? I want them thinking the building is under assault from multiple directions. Absolutely. I can sequence the detonations to simulate coordinated strikes. Do it. And Henderson, if TDF asks about casualties, tell them acceptable losses. We knew the risks when we signed up. Negative, Chen. You're both coming home from this. That's an order. Despite everything, Zara smiled. Henderson might have been retired, but he still thought like a commanding officer. It was oddly comforting to have someone else making the big-picture decisions. The first explosion rocked the building's east wing, followed immediately by two more in rapid succession. The detonations were perfectly timed to suggest a coordinated assault, and Zara could hear the Vorthons outside responding to what they perceived as multiple threats. Phase 2, she announced, hefting the captured plasma rifle. We take the fight to them. The hallways of Lincoln High School became a battlefield unlike anything the building had ever seen. Zara moved through familiar corridors that had been transformed into alien combat zones, using her knowledge of the terrain to maximum advantage. The Vorthons were skilled soldiers, but they had made a critical error in choosing this engagement. They were fighting in an enclosed environment against opponents who knew every detail of the battlefield, using tactics designed for open-field warfare against enemies who specialized in asymmetric combat. Zara used the school's ventilation system to move between floors undetected, emerging to strike at isolated soldiers before disappearing again. The aliens' superior technology became a liability in the cramped spaces, where their long-range weapons were less effective than human adaptability and creativity. In the gymnasium, she triggered one of Marcus's charges, just as a squad of Vorthons entered, bringing down part of the ceiling and trapping them in rubble. In the library, she used the metal shelving units to create impromptu barricades and kill zones where the aliens' numerical advantage meant nothing. But it was in the cafeteria that the real turning point came. Zara had been pinned down by crossfire from 3 different directions when she heard a sound that made her heart race, the distinctive hum of human military transport vehicles. Through the cafeteria windows, she could see TDF dropships landing in the parking lot, disgorging squads of heavily armed space marines. The cavalry had arrived. The engagement shifted dramatically as professional human soldiers joined the battle. The Vorthons, who had expected to face a single traumatized ex-soldier, suddenly found themselves outnumbered and outgunned by an entire company of Earth's finest warriors. But the aliens weren't finished. As the human forces closed in, their leader triggered some kind of emergency protocol. A brilliant pulse of energy erupted from the alien commander's position, and Zara felt a familiar sensation, the disorienting shift that accompanied dimensional folding. "They're opening a jump portal," she shouted into her communicator. "All units, prevent their escape." The air in the cafeteria began to shimmer and tear as reality folded in on itself. The Vorthon commander was attempting to extract its forces using the same technology that had allowed them to bypass the quantum barrier around their home system. Zara realized with cold certainty that if the aliens escaped, they would return with reinforcements. This incursion would become a full-scale invasion, and Earth would face the same devastation she had witnessed on colony worlds throughout human space. Without hesitation, she sprinted toward the forming portal, firing the captured plasma rifle on full automatic. The weapon's power cell drained rapidly, but her shots disrupted the energy matrix, stabilizing the dimensional fold. The portal began to collapse, but the Vorthon commander was already stepping through. In seconds, it would be gone, carrying intelligence about Earth's defenses and the location of classified personnel back to its commanders. Zara threw herself forward, tackling the alien leader just as the portal's edges began to close. For a moment, she was suspended between dimensions, caught in the impossible space between 2 realities. She could see the Vorthon homeworld on the other side. Red skies, crystalline cities, and vast armies preparing for war. Then Marcus's final charge detonated somewhere behind her, and the resulting shockwave destabilized the portal completely. Reality snapped back into focus like a rubber band, and Zara found herself lying on the cafeteria floor with the unconscious Vorthan commander beside her. The silence that followed was deafening. "Chen!" Captain Henderson's voice cut through the ringing in her ears. "Report!" "Target secured," she managed, struggling to sit up. "Portal closed. Threat neutralized." Around her, TDF Marines were securing the scene and checking for additional hostiles. The school that had felt like a prison just hours earlier was now a crime scene, its hallways marked by plasma burns and improvised explosives. But they had won. Against impossible odds, using nothing but human ingenuity and sheer stubborn determination, they had defeated a force that should have overwhelmed them completely. Commander Sarah Martinez of TDF Special Operations approached as medics checked Zara for injuries. "Sergeant Chen, that was outstanding work. How did you know to disrupt the portal matrix?" "Experience, ma'am. I've seen what happens when Vorthans escape to regroup. Sometimes the only option is to prevent their retreat, whatever the cost. The cost could have been your life." Zara looked around at the damaged school, thinking about the students and teachers who had escaped safely, about the invasion that had been prevented, about the countless human lives that would continue because 3 people had been willing to stand and fight. "Respectfully, Commander, that's what we signed up for." 3 weeks later, Zara sat in the same cafeteria, now fully repaired and returned to normal operation. The official story was a gas leak explosion that had required extensive renovation. Only a few people knew the truth about what had really happened. Marcus sat across from her, his cover as a transfer student now blown, but his mission complete. "So what's next for you?" he asked. "Back to active duty?" Zara shook her head. "Actually, I think I'm going to stay here for a while. Finish high school." "Really? After all that excitement, you want to go back to worrying about pop quizzes and prom themes?" She smiled, watching her classmates chat about ordinary teenage concerns. "You know what I realized during that fight? This is what we're protecting. Not colonies or shipping lanes or strategic resources. This, normal life. People who get to worry about normal things because someone else handles the dangerous stuff. And you want to be part of that normal life?" "For a while, yeah. Besides," she added with a grin, "after fighting aliens with improvised weapons in my old high school, I'm pretty sure I can handle whatever drama Lincoln High has to offer." Emma Winters approached their table, looking slightly nervous. "Hey, Zara, I know you said maybe before, but would you like to hang out this weekend? There's a movie playing that looks really good." Zara looked at her former classmate, someone whose biggest worry was probably whether her crush would ask her to the spring dance, and felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was exactly what she had fought to preserve. "You know what, Emma? That sounds perfect." As the lunch period continued around them, Zara Chen, veteran of interstellar warfare, defender of human space, and teenage girl trying to figure out where she belonged, realized that sometimes the greatest victory was simply having the choice to be normal. Even if you never quite forgot how to be anything else,